Transcripts and recordings of the podcast may not be used for any purpose without the direct written permission of the podcast owner. Welcome to Light It Up, a podcast about resilient women balancing motherhood, their careers, personal lives, and all of the challenges that come along with being a superwoman. Each week, you'll be motivated to take action to lead, inspire, transform, and empower. Now, here's your host, Dr. Aginah. Hey, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Light It Up. I am your host, Dr. Aginah. I am so very excited about this week's episode because it's been a while since I've been on the microphone. I have been traveling and doing all of the things, and unfortunately, just haven't had time to do this, which is what I really love. But I am going to always make time for Melanie Hall because she is an absolute gem and we've got some exciting news to share with you. So I am pleased to welcome back Melanie Hall of Insights Therapeutic.
Insights Therapeutic Services, yes.
How are you?
I am peachy. I am wonderful. It is wonderful to be alive, right? It is, no matter how the year has gone for everyone, at the end of the day, we are exactly where we're supposed to be. So I embrace that.
Yes. We're in the last quarter, last month of the year.
Chapter 12.
Yes, chapter 12. And it looks like you're ending 2024 on a bang, and then you're going to start 2025
yes, ma'am.
with a louder bang, I guess, because you've been in the lab. You've been doing so many things this year. You released We Didn't Have That Conversation card.
Yes.
Which I've had an opportunity to use.
Awesome.
I don't know if we're going to talk about that because I don't know, but these cards you launched, you released, and then that kind of blossomed into in-person events where you had both married individuals,
married, single men, women come together to have conversations, in-depth conversations about all the nuances of relationships, but more so focusing on the communication within those relationships.
Yes. And I had an opportunity to attend one. I wanted to attend all of them, but I couldn't fit everything in one day. Every time you had an event, I had plans to go, but I went to one, and I just want to kind of bring this up just for a moment because the activity that we did, we had a sheet, and we had to kind of
break down the ingredients.
Yes. And
so that one was where I wanted you to really, out of 100, sort of break down what is more important for you. So whether it is trust, and so that would equate to maybe like fat, right? Communication might correlate to something like sugar. So it just correlates to different things that, when you see the back of a container and it talks about full ingredients, the breakdown, once you do the same for your life, right? And so the things that are important to you in a relationship, and what was told to me later, especially by some of the couples, was I do realize I changed. One of the men came to me and said, so I didn't think I needed empathy like that because I didn't need it in the past, but I need it now.
Yes. And see, and I have all of my stuff right here.
Check you out.
I'm prepared. I'm prepared. It was called The Relationship Nutritional Facts. What are your dietary needs?
Yes,
And
yes.
the amount per interaction had to equal 100 grams.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that, and to the point that you raised about the gentleman who said he didn't realize how much he changed,
Yeah.
same thing when the things that I thought
Yep.
were important to me or that,
Yeah.
was higher on the totem pole probably 20 plus years ago has
Yes.
shifted. And
Absolutely.
I thought it was a great way to just kind of assess, reevaluate where you are as an individual
Yep.
and recognize that people change.
Yes. And I
And
need to communicate this to a potential partner or my partner that's already there. Like, I recognize I've actually changed. And so some of the things I've been asking you for may not have actually been that thing. Looking at this, I see it's something else, right?
Mhm,
And now I can identify it because I actually had an opportunity to sit and review that. It was intentional for people to actually look at it in that moment. Some people took it home. They were like, this is a lot for me to absorb because I've never broken it down. A lot of people
mhm.
don't assess their needs that way. They just kind of go with life and
Yeah,
just assume, I've always needed X, Y, and Z, but that doesn't mean you always will. Life
right.
happens. It changes us.
Yes. So, and then now
Yes.
you just quietly, I mean, I don't recall you telling me that you were working on another project. And I thought we were kind of close, Virgo. So I the other day realized that now you have a book
Yes,
that's being
ma'am.
released, so published author. Um, the book Change Your Words to Change Your World.
Yes, yes. So
Oh.
this book is a culmination of a lot of things around effective communication, especially the dysfunctional communication that we all have, right? Unless we are intentionally working on it. And so the book is for people, whether they are in relationships or in the workplace.
Mm,
Yes, because it can go in any place. It goes with you, right? Because it's about your communication. What are you trying to communicate? What have you done to communicate things in the past that haven't worked for you? And now you know you need to change, right? And sometimes there's just subtle changes because some people do actually focus on their personal and professional development.
mhm,
However, we don't really focus on that because we believe we have communicated the very thing that we need to. And sometimes we don't understand where the glitches came from. This book will help guide people through changing how they communicate.
okay. All
Yes.
right. So how's the structure of the book? Is it more like sometimes with these type would you consider this a self-help book?
I would definitely consider it a self-help book. It is transformational and informational at the same time,
Mhm,
because what we want is a change, right? But I'm also providing information as to how we got there and then how you can get on the other side. So the book is filled with some of my own stories, but very realistic tools and strategies I go within and assess what is it that I'm trying to communicate and where are some of my gaps? Because, like one of the things that I identify in the book is four communication styles, one of them being passive aggressive, and assertive. And assertive is really where we want to be.
mhm.
However, we will think that we are being assertive and we might actually be aggressive.
Hmm. Can you give me a couple of examples,
Oh,
Melanie?
wow.
I'm just curious.
Absolutely. Passive aggressive looks like this. You may ask your spouse or even your children, can you
Mhm,
wash the dishes for me? Sure, I'll wash the dishes. They're going to do it when they're ready, and they're not going to do a great job. Their behavior is communicating to you, I don't want to do it, and I'm hoping I do it so poorly that you don't ask me again. Rather than saying, is there something else I can do for you? Because I'd rather not do this, right? Have a conversation, especially when it's not so much with children, but spouses, especially. It's like, if you just really hate washing the dishes, why don't we have a conversation about it rather than creating a situation where now we're arguing about dirty dishes?
Mhm.
You get what I'm saying? Let's have the conversation. Um, Aggressive around the same topic might be no, absolutely not. And they walk away. Like,
Mm,
what are you trying to create? Right? You got to really ask yourself, am I trying to create a healthy situation? Am I trying to create a situation where there's dialogue, or am I just trying to cut people off because I believe that what I say is it? It's done. I've said it and I'm walking away, right? Cutting people off, not even caring about what other people think or how your words landed, right? Then there is the passive where, can you wash the dishes? Sure, even though I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I worked a 12-hour day, maybe I'm really not in the bed, but I do it to please you, but I'm resentful later,
mm.
right? And so it may come up later that I keep doing things for you and I really don't want to do them, but I'm not communicating that. And then the assertive would be, I can do them, I will do them. Do you need them done right now? Because I'd rather do them at a different time or not at all. Can we trade? It's having the conversation. I'm going to advocate for myself because I really don't want to do it, right?
Mhm.
I'm not going to just flat out and say no. I'm not going to be aggressive about it. Like you're always asking me to do something. I'm not going to go there, but I am going to open up conversation around it where you feel heard and I feel heard.
Okay. Now, when you gave the example of assertive, I immediately what the light bulb that went off in my mind was, but what about the tone? How much,
Mhm. And
what
that's where assertive and aggressive
yeah.
can sometimes get gray in that,
Yeah.
get a little murky because
Mhm,
people forget about body language and they also forget
mhm.
about tone and cadence, right? Facial expressions.
Yeah.
I always share with people, one of my corporate America jobs. I was told that I was not approachable.
Mhm,
Right. I was told that I tend to look bothered when people would come to me. And while on the inside, yes, I did feel bothered, but that's not what I was trying to communicate. But I never changed my facial expression when I would look up to talk to people. It stayed the same. I had to learn that my facial expressions were saying something before my words even came out of my mouth.
mhm,
Right. So we don't always assess all the parts of us before we say something. And we have to make sure that our body language, our facial expressions, our the cadence and the tone, like if those things are not in check, maybe say, can we come back to this? Because I'm really not in a space to have that conversation right now. And I don't want to create a situation that's negative, right? I'd rather, if you could wait, I'd come back to it when I'm feeling a little different.
mhm. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Look, I'm making mental notes.
Awesome. Because we talk every day. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we are
Yeah.
communicating well
Right.
every day. And even just because I wrote the book doesn't mean I have to tell myself these things all the time. I have to
Mhm,
catch myself because there was a point in time where I was extremely aggressive and I just figured, that's who I am. No, it's not. It's who I allowed myself to be. It's habits that I created that needed to change because I wanted my relationships to change, whether it was spouse, friends, children, workplace, right? Professional relationships, you got to really pay attention because what are you trying to communicate? How did I leave that person? How did my words land, right?
mhm.
You can't manage how people feel, but you can manage how you communicate something.
Yeah, that's true. I'm thinking about in my assertive behavior in the way I communicate, particularly in the workplace.
Mhm,
Um, there are times where people take what I say, I believe they take what I say the wrong way because I'm a
mhm.
direct communicator.
Mhm.
But I've tried to, kind of evaluate who am I talking to? What type of
Yes,
personality do they have? How are
yes,
they going to receive what I'm saying? So I do try
yes,
to practice now, like thinking about choosing my words carefully.
yes. Like
Um,
who's your audience?
yeah.
Whether it's one person or 10 people, do
Hmm.
you know your audience enough to know how to approach them so that your message is heard?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we will say direct, and sometimes other people hear aggressive. some
Right.
people hear confrontational,
Yeah.
right? And what you're really trying to convey is you won't have to ask, what does she mean? Because I'll tell you, right? But people tend to, when they hear direct, they think aggressive and confrontational, and it doesn't have to mean that. And so sometimes you might want to even say, I'm very direct, but I am fair and I do
Mhm,
listen, right?
mhm,
And I'm open to other ideas so that
mhm.
people know my directness is not supposed to be a turnoff. It should be appreciated.
Yeah. I do often wonder though,
Mhm.
um, how much of a factor is one's gender
Mhm.
when it
Mhm. Mhm.
comes to the communication?
Mhm.
Because as a Black woman, I
Yes.
can be clear and direct in my communication, and it is taken
Yes.
as aggressive. But
Yes.
if a Caucasian man or a
Mhm.
Caucasian woman
Yeah.
say the same thing,
It doesn't hit the same,
it
right?
doesn't hit the
It is
same.
not perceived the same.
Right. Yeah.
What I often like to encourage people to use are disclaimers
Mhm.
and say, I want to make sure that what I'm about to say is actually heard in this way, right? I hope that you receive it in the manner that I'm trying to speak it because it's meant to connect and not meant to divide, right? So
Yeah.
that is where that piece you can maybe, close the gap there so that people understand what your intentions are.
Mhm.
So the
Yeah.
stated intentions may help reduce some of that, but then at the end of the day, the race issue is not our issue,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes people may still have an issue because
Mhm.
they want to have one,
Mhm.
right? And we
Yeah.
can't do anything about that piece, but we can make sure the room knows what the intention is.
Yeah. Now, how is it that when you decided that you were gonna write this book,
Mm.
because I'm curious to know, um, how you were able to bring, the communication patterns in your marriage, your relationships, and the
Mhm.
workplace all together.
Yes,
Whereas, a person may have just only focused on one dynamic, one area.
yes,
So
yes.
how do you bring all of this together?
Yes, absolutely. Good question. Because what we do is focus on the basic concept of communication and it being healthy in nature, right? So I'm addressing in the book mental health,
Mhm,
right? So there's an underlying piece of mental health because sometimes we are not our best selves and it comes out in our words, our behavior, the way that we stand, our demeanor, it comes out in everything, right? So if you are married, there are strategies in here that help you look at your own cognitive beliefs when you are communicating with someone else, right? So if you have what's called, it's in the book, called a mental filter, right? Which means you tend to think negatively.
mhm,
When your coworker, a supervisor, spouse, a friend is saying something to you, communicating something, and you have a mental filter that is negative, you will only receive it as negative. That means you have to go check that. That's not on them to try and package it in such a way that you see it as positive. That's your filter, right? So I talk about the different cognitive, what we call cognitive distortions in the book because they go everywhere. So if I have a negative filter, if I catastrophize, right, most
mhm,
things, when someone comes to talk to me, whether it is in my marriage, whether it is a friend, whether it is a family member, and I catastrophize most things, most of my conversations are going to escalate. We have to deal with that on our own. So if there are issues like that, right?
mhm,
What does the book say? You might want to talk to someone, right?
mhm,
Because
mhm,
there's something within that's getting in the way of your ability to effectively communicate. So this is why it can translate into marriage, into relationships, into the workplace, because we take that same stuff to work. Oftentimes people think that they are different at work than they are at home. And yeah, there's some shred of difference, right? Because we do
mhm.
switch, right? We code
Yeah,
switch
yes.
often, right? But
Right.
and we try to take a very black and white approach at work, right? But at the end of the day, there's often something left that feels very uncomfortable in the way you might communicate with your coworkers, right? And it might be, I feel victimized, right? And it doesn't have to be you really are. So then we got to go do a self check. Am I really being victimized, or do I think when I go in some of these spaces that I'm always a victim, right? Like you got to really go within and dissect, what am I bringing to the table that might be making some things negative?
Mm,
What
okay.
am I bringing to the table that might be distorting my own view of what's occurring and what someone said? Am I able to take constructive criticism, right? If I have a negative way of thinking, criticism is not seen as just critiquing some things and telling me these might be areas of improvement. I might actually just assume you don't like me and that you will never like me, right? And so I'm going to respond negatively. I won't receive the feedback. I will always see it as this person has a personal thing against me and they just they don't communicate well with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. When does the book come out? And, well, yeah, when is the book going to be released? That's
Yes. The book is going to be released. It should be January 14th. I am going to upload it 2 days before, and it should be ready on the 14th, ready for download, definitely, and ready for purchases. I am going to do a book launch party on the
yeah.
19th.
Oh,
The venue is TBD, but definitely on the 19th. That will also be my celebration of 9 years of doing mental health work in the community. How about that?
congratulations. That's awesome.
You.
That's Sunday, January 19th.
That Sunday, January 19th.
All
9 years of providing services within the community to, to all, to diverse people, but definitely, my own.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's exciting.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then now, will you have any, like similarly to what you did with
Arts.
the events with the conversations, are you going to, I guess, take the show on the road?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, in 2 weeks, I will be in Dallas doing an event because someone asked me to come do a private event for them. So
Okay.
I am also willing to go out of state with this, but no, definitely I will be blending the two because it's important conversations that need to be had, like just the way that we communicate, and even within just where we live, right? Living
Yeah.
in Chicago, and I talk about it in the book. Sometimes your geographical area plays a role in how you communicate.
Oh,
When we
absolutely.
walked on the streets of, Chicago, there's a certain way that you have to carry yourself so that you don't become a victim. We
Uh-huh.
can let that go, right?
Oh,
Most of the
we
time,
can.
we
Oh,
can actually let, because we don't maneuver the same way anymore, right? But we
yeah.
still carry it
Yeah.
just in case. But it does, it flows over into our relationships, it flows over into the workplace because we have this protective way about ourselves, but we don't always have to be on guard. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, it matters. So, yes, so the it matters
I feel like you just called me out because every now and again
every now and then.
I will say, hey, I'm
I
from
gotta take it back to the
Inglewood.
street.
I'm just saying. Don't let these suburbanite the zip code fool
I,
you.
the zip code was 1606, right?
Hello.
I can tap into that if I have
Hello.
to.
That's
But
right.
most of the time, we no longer have to, right?
Yeah.
And so I want us to just kind of go within. And so, yes, blending what the cards, how they can be used, as well as how the book can be used and leveraged in your own personal and professional life. It will
Mhm.
definitely be talking points when I do the live events. So I will be creating my 2025 calendar over the next couple of weeks. I'm still looking at doing 4 events around relationships, but I am definitely looking to go into some of the workplaces with,
Mhm.
workplace wellness and discuss the book as well. Maybe do some workshops around corporate wellness because it matters, right? Because communication is just one of the things we think we do well. Just because we have a degree, we had a speech class and things like that, doesn't mean that we are communicating what we want to communicate.
Right.
You got to be able to read that room, and you got to be able to be self-aware enough to
Mhm.
understand whether or not people are receiving your message.
And I'm glad you mentioned the workplace because that was the next question I was going to ask,
Mhm.
whether you facilitate any type of corporate trainings and workshops or professional development activities.
Yes. Yes.
Because
I've actually done a couple for some CPS programs for some of their employees to talk about effective communication. So this had been in the workings behind the scenes, and I break down some of the same communication barriers and communication styles, and the self-aware. Speaking about the self-awareness and making sure you have identify what's going on with you before you attempt to communicate with someone because it's not for them to sift through. Right.
hmm
So yeah,
yeah. And
absolutely.
in the workplace, the dynamics that I'm thinking about, because I'm in higher education
Yeah.
and it's cross-generational,
Yeah.
with our staff. I
Yeah.
don't know, is it Gen Y?
Different ages,
Yes,
different
exactly.
sexes, different lifestyles, right?
Yes,
Different cultures. The world has come in closer for us, even though it's so vast, like it has gotten a little smaller, right? Because
right.
people from all walks of life are now coming into the room. And when you think about how different we all are,
Mhm,
communication is going to be just as different. So, like when I discuss the disclaimers, how important is that for someone to say, let me be sure that you actually understand what I'm trying to say before I say it. And then it's misconstrued, and then we have a different issue, right?
mm,
So, even like the C suite executives who sometimes think that they have communicated everything well, whether it is written or spoken.
mhm,
Maybe not. Your staff may not have received what you're actually trying to communicate because perhaps it was void of recognition of what's going on the floor, so to speak, right,
mhm,
amongst the worker bees. So are you effectively communicating what you want? The leadership, does that come through? Does the care, does the concern come through that you actually care about your employees? Because a lot of times it does not.
yeah. You got my wheels turning over here. I think we need you at an institution or 2 to come in.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, because it's when I look at the dynamics, some of the my colleagues and what they experience with their teams and
Yeah.
the same with me, uh
Hmm.
we're all we could use some help.
Yeah, yeah. And I love doing those types of things because people go, I didn't think that I was saying all of that. And it's like, but perhaps you do, because like when I talk about assertiveness and I say it removes the fluff. And so when you respond, you leave it. But people often want to fill in the gaps of silence. And it's like, leave it and let someone think about what you just said. The silence is not necessarily negative. It's oftentimes let someone process it, right? And then maybe check and say, are you sure that you understood because I want you to ask the questions, right? Open the door, ask the questions if you aren't sure what I said, right? If you aren't sure what that means, let me know now so that you don't walk away
Mhm.
assuming, right? Which creates another issue.
Okay. Now, and then to bring it back to couples,
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a husband. So, but would you recommend, I mean, I had one before. I just haven't had
Understood.
one in a long time.
Mhm.
Would you recommend this book for couples to kind of work on together?
Oh, absolutely.
Like
There are strategies at the end of each chapter. There are
Mhm,
takeaways at the end of each chapter, and they can
mhm,
write notes in the back of the
mhm.
book because I want it to also be a work in progress with you so
Okay.
that you can maybe stop, start, and go through a chapter and just kind of sit with that, right?
Mhm,
And then even maybe if you're not seeing me, you see another therapist, take it to
mhm,
your therapist. The same
mhm,
with the cards, right? I always tell
mhm,
people you can take them to your therapist, right?
mhm,
And the book as well, because it's like, I need to do some self-exploration, and I know that I need to be more self-aware. And that's usually what's missing in the intimate relationships
Mhm,
is the
mhm,
self-awareness and the ability to empathize with someone else and not always feel victim to someone's words.
mhm. Now, what about, okay, so now what's the approach that someone like me should take if
Mhm.
I am dating or, should I be using these cards and the book
Yes, ma'am.
as
Well,
I am?
even for single people,
Oh, okay. There's
because guess
something for
what?
us too.
Well, when you go through you need to be able to answer the questions,
Well, yeah, the cards I've got.
right?
Yeah. The
And
card,
the book go ahead, I'm sorry.
but what's the approach? I mean, I know everybody's different, but
Mhm.
what would you recommend? Like, my concern is, let me have a few minutes of your time for a little bit of a session.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
My concern is, do I whip out these cards and say, okay, um,
Yeah,
like,
if it's done like that, that might not go over well.
right.
So it could be I know someone that created these cards and there's questions. They are not meant to say that we are going to be together forever. Just conversation. Because sometimes I have trouble coming up with what to ask. So
Yes.
I'm just gonna use some of the cards. So I got a few. Do you mind?
Okay.
Because I'm getting to know you anyway, right?
Okay.
Or it can be an approach of maybe this is like third date, let's say, right? And you're
Mhm.
like, okay, so you told me quite a bit. How do you feel about answering just a couple of questions that a therapist created that just help us dissect some stuff?
You want me to say that to a man
You say
about
that, and this is what you're going to follow up with. If you don't want to answer that question, we can pass. If it seems too deep, we can pass because we're not there yet. Like acknowledge we're not there yet, but it might be fun. You might find out something about yourself. I might find out something about myself, and we might find out something about one another.
Okay, I like that. I'm gonna try
Yeah.
that.
Because you don't have to answer the question.
Yeah.
Now, some people might read into it and say they didn't want to answer that question. What does that mean? Right?
Mhm.
Maybe file it away for yourself if it made you that uncomfortable,
Mm,
right? Maybe
yeah.
because it may not be time to explore that yet because you're not in that phase. Because
Okay.
they do have phases, right? Relationships
Right.
have phases. There's a time and a place to discuss certain things, but the cards help you identify certain characteristics that might be pleasant or not.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. This whole dating in your 40s, my God. Oh,
And that is why I love bringing people together
yeah.
because we're so different now. Dating at 20, we spent time on the phone. We could do simple things. And it was like, well, I don't expect you to have any money and do X, Y, and Z. Now people are like 50-50. People are like, I'm not paying for anything. You can pay for it. And it's like, wow, how did we get here? Let's talk about that, right? The last event, there was a conversation about, masculinity in women. That was dissected so well, I believe. It took up a little time because that one opened up Pandora's box for
Okay.
sure. And
Okay.
that one, what it came down to was the men were saying, it's not that you can't have argument, right? When they are out with other men and another man approaches them with aggression, they can match that aggression. But when women approach them and confront them with a level of aggression and escalation, they can't match you with the same energy. So they just kind of shut down. Does that make sense? I think
Mhm.
people were caught up on the word masculine. I know that's where I was, and there were a lot of women because it's like, why does confrontation and or advocacy have
Mhm.
to look like masculine behavior,
Mhm.
right? And so we dissected that in the last event, which is why I love having them.
Okay. Because now, where my head went was, I had someone, this had to be a year ago,
Mhm.
who, we were dating, and they felt that I was not I was not, I was too independent, is what I was told. I don't ask them or I don't need them. I don't ask them for anything. And I felt like they equated their level of masculinity to
Yes.
money or me having to, want for something. And here's my reality. I've been divorced for
Yes.
almost 12 years. I've
Yes.
had to be
I
independent.
had to be independent. Yes.
I don't have
I've had to
somebody.
step into certain shoes,
Yeah,
behaviors, and mindsets to be able to survive and be
right,
a mom, right?
right,
Of three to
right,
do this and work, be a
right,
professional. So I'm
right,
doing a lot of things on my own. There's no softness there,
right,
right? There's no softness in grinding,
right.
right? And so that we definitely explore some of that. And what some of the men shared was we know that 9 times out of 10, you guys are going to be the higher earners. We know that you're probably going to be the higher educated. However, don't lead with it.
Mhm.
That was the feedback. Don't lead with it. I believe sometimes you can't help but see that I have a car that I like. I paid for it, right? I obtained it on my own. I obtained my own home, whatever it may be. But if that bothers you, that's more about you than it is about me.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we can have a conversation about it because I don't need you to provide financial services. It would help, but that's not what I need you here for. I'm looking for a partner. So if we can't grow together in partnership, right?
Mhm.
Intimate partners,
Mhm.
that's a different thing.
Yeah.
This is a barrier for you. My ability to pivot when I was in one situation and I'm no longer in that situation, I had to pivot and make things happen on my own. If my ability to pivot and be independent is a problem for you, that is a different conversation. And you may not be a good suitor for me.
Right. Well, see, I'm gonna have to learn how to use that language too, 'cause because
Because
I
maybe I say it differently.
yeah, because I didn't say it like that. That sounded so much better than
Because it
than
leaves you with having you, that's on you.
yeah,
It's not for me to manage.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
But at least I've learned, okay, this is what I can walk away from because
Yes.
this is
Yes.
not gonna
Yes.
work.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's okay to embrace the ability to walk away because there was a time we didn't and
Mhm.
wouldn't, right?
Right.
For
Yeah.
fear of whatever. To be able to do that now says I'm being way more true and authentic to myself that I don't have to accept lesser than in the name of saying I'm in a relationship. I don't have
Yeah.
to do that.
That exactly.
Mhm.
And I had a conversation with my oldest daughter who now I will say sometimes she hurts my feelings because if she finds out that well, so here's the thing. I don't say to my children, "Oh, I'm dating
I'm
this
dating
person."
someone new. Right.
Right. It's they usually know that there's someone's, because
Mhm.
they're either paying attention to my phone conversations or
Yep.
it may
Yep.
so
She
it's
will
that.
hang out a little more.
Yeah. Um, so she has asked, "Don't you want to get married again?" And so my response, because there was a point in time where I said, "No, I don't want to
Yeah.
get married again."
Yeah.
I even had someone that I dated at one point in time who asked me, would what did I want to get married again?
Yeah.
It was very early in our relationship.
Mhm.
And I said no, because I thought it was too early for them to ask.
And at that time, you weren't that interested.
Right.
Mhm.
Um, so my response to her was, there was a point in time where no, I did not.
Yeah.
I am now open
Mhm.
to it, but I am very clear that I don't have to get married again to prove something to anyone,
Right. Right.
or to
And
have
hold
something else.
societal standards.
Yes. And I
Mhm.
said, I've been married. Been there, done that.
I've done it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I
Um,
didn't know myself enough to know a
right.
whole lot of things.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Because I know now my 47-year-old self knows I had no business getting married at 23 years old.
Yep, 25. Mhm.
That just didn't make sense.
Mhm.
Um,
Looking
but
back, we were not ready.
yeah, not at all.
Mhm.
Not at all. Um, so but it's just interesting that even that generation, the way
Yeah,
they're looking at it and posing this question,
yeah,
that we still, as a society, place a certain value
yes.
on being in relationships. Like you have to be in a relationship.
Because media still does what media does. It sends
Hmm.
a message, right?
Yeah,
No matter the medium, it sends a message.
right.
So whether that message is no one wants to be alone, everyone should have someone. Some people are okay with being alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's get to know you
Hmm.
and then proceed.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. And hopefully the person that you are trying to establish a
Got
relationship
to
with,
know themselves as well.
that's exactly
Yes.
because
Have you done the work? Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to I think sometimes and I'm just gonna say women,
Mhm.
we don't listen to what is being said,
No, we don't.
or we think, oh, he'll change his mind. They'll change their mind. If I just work on him a
He
little
has
bit.
already shown you who he is.
Yes.
Believe him. Believe him.
Yep.
Mhm. Mhm. It is a thing. If you pay attention, they will show you who they are. And
Hmm.
that's men and women, right? But
Yeah.
definitely for women, we sometimes get caught up in the aesthetics, right? And we don't actually pay attention to, is there a contradiction here, right?
Mhm.
Is there a pattern that's off? He said he works a lot of hours. There's a video game that he's been on for X. Do you really work on those hours?
Mhm.
Really paying attention to a person, and because that is the one thing that men do different than women.
Yeah.
Men will observe,
Yes.
will observe, and they
Yeah.
will allow that to tell them what they need to know.
Yeah.
Women will hear the words and then go into dream state, and we don't hear anything else.
Right.
And then when there's a contradiction, then we go into, well, maybe, but it doesn't have to be that. And then you don't want to share anything with your friends because you're starting to feel a little stupid, right? And it's only 4 months in. Can we give them 4 seasons? Let somebody show you a full year of behavior before you start to say, before you go into dream state, because they will show you who they are.
Yes.
Like right now, we're in fall, late fall now. The winter
Cuffing
might well be.
season.
Man, but here's the thing. People get depressed around this time of year. Are you
Yeah.
paying attention? Because that person might really get depressed. They might start tapping into their vices, right? It might be gambling, it might be marijuana, it might be drinking. They might be tapping into their vices because they don't want you to see that they really get low during that time.
Mhm.
You may be helping them manage that later. You need to know that that's a thing. Pay
Mhm.
attention, right? Or ask the question, because that's one of the questions in the deck. How does change of seasons impact you? That's
Mm,
just
that,
a get to know your question.
that is a I need to pull that card out.
Right. How does seasons impact you, right? Like that's not anything heavy. That's just a
Right.
simple, you know what? Actually, I hate winter. And it's like, do you get depressed? Like, do you get a little
Mhm.
down? And they might say, no, I don't necessarily get depressed, but I do start to get antsy, right? Okay,
Mhm.
so this person probably needs to have some staycations or vacation, something, right? They may need something. So I know I need to pay attention to that because I don't want it to impact me. If
Right.
I love you, yes, it impacts me in a way, but how heavy is it? Right.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah,
Okay. Okay.
there's a
Well,
method to madness.
so Change Your Words to Change Your World
Yes.
will be released January 14th.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's available as a ebook and physical.
Yes, it will be on sale at Amazon,
Okay.
17.99.
Okay.
But pay attention because stay connected to me because I will when it comes out, it will be at a much cheaper price, right? The Kindle will be 199 more than likely.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
what I've had it set right now.
Okay. And I forgot also, you've got the Facebook group. I don't know. That's a private.
It is a private group and we discuss relationship stuff.
Right. Right.
So it
Okay.
is an extension of the cards.
Hmm.
The cards are we didn't have that conversation. The group is we are having that conversation.
Okay.
And so right now we have a little over 200 members. I'm very proud of that.
Mhm.
And I try to post something, other people will post something that a lot of times it might be memes, it might be other videos that we just kind of go into and say, what do you think? Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes men will respond, sometimes both, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes men will post something, and then there's some things that we get crickets, no men say anything. And then I feel the need to tag somebody and say, I know you think something,
Right.
just say it, right?
Right.
So no,
Yeah.
I try to keep it lively, not so heavy, but
Mhm.
I'm really loving where it's going. Yes.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the group. I kind of chime in every now and then, depending on
Yeah,
what the topic is.
yeah.
Um, but I think it is important for us to engage in dialogue. I mean, if we look at our parents and history and how they dealt with different things, this
You mean
is
didn't deal with the things?
yes, I was trying to
Trying to clean it up a little
yes,
bit.
exactly.
Mhm.
To break that
Yeah,
curse, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and that is what you're helping us to do. So I
That
want
is
to
cool.
thank you for, I guess I would say, shifting just a little bit, right? Because you didn't start out focusing on relationships.
Relationships.
Yeah, and
Yes
it's
and no. I've always
yes,
seen couples,
yeah.
just my own personal walk
Hmm.
led me there.
Okay.
I've been married, divorced, and remarried to the same person, and we had to do all the work, right?
Hmm.
We have had to do those questions. We've had to go there because who we were in 1996 when we got married was very different in
Hmm.
2017 when we got remarried. Very different people. Goals have changed, right? Health has changed. I'm going to say priorities have changed, right?
Hmm.
We got to learn to communicate those changes. We got to check in,
Yeah.
right? You were going to ask me something. Go ahead. Mhm.
Well, I was don't kill me, but when you said you've been, and I know that you've been married, divorced, and remarried. So then how long have you been married? Like, do you count from the beginning? What do you do?
So,
This is just
at
totally
first
off
I
topic.
was not counting the gap because in realistically, we've never been apart longer than a year. And
Okay.
during that year that we were apart, we had kids, so we saw each other every day, right? But in terms of there was back and forth in there. But in terms of like we are done, we're not together, we're just co-parenting, that was probably a year.
Okay.
Outside of that, it has been all work in progress, right? Until it was like, you know what? He was ready to get married long before me. I
Wow.
I was the holdup because I wanted to be sure that we didn't go back into the same patterns of behavior. And
Okay.
so there was a lot of conversation that needed to be had, and I needed to make sure that I could be who I said I wanted to be to him, right?
Mhm.
So that it took that long for life to be happening and trying to evolve at the same time. But during all that time, there were lots of conversations
Mhm.
about how you've changed, about how life is changing you, what you want to do now. Because when we got married, I didn't have my degree. I wasn't a
Mhm.
therapist, right?
Mhm.
So I've evolved, he's evolved. And it's like, wow, we spent a lot of time on dumb stuff,
Mhm.
but we had to grow. And so there were a lot of growing pains. And so we're not afraid to talk about it. So when
Mhm.
people hear it, they go, so if y'all were, yes, but we have been together pretty much all that time. He's like, we have been together 30 years. And I'm just like, it's not 30, but okay.
He said it was 30.
I know. But we have truly grown up together. So
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
has, so I've always loved working with couples because
Mm.
I do believe if you do the work and you really want the relationship, you can make it work.
Yeah. Well, I think it's awesome that you are even that transparent as well to kind of share, like, we've been through
Yeah. Yeah.
all of the things. So you're speaking from experience and you're helping, your clients and potential clients.
Yeah.
Based
Yeah.
on-
Definitely a blend of a personal walk and a professional walk that
Yeah.
has married one another to
Yeah.
try and help people. Mhm. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you. It's always
It
a
is always pleasant and I love it here and I can be myself and I appreciate that.
well, I'm so glad that you said yes to come back. And now I think, this is the third time that
The
you've done
third time, man.
this. Okay. And we again, book is available, Change Your Words to Change Your World, January 14th. So everybody be on the lookout.
Yes.
Um, be able to purchase on Amazon.
On Amazon. Yes,
Mhm.
ma'am.
Yes.
And they can find me at melaniekhall.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Melanie. It was a pleasure talking to you. I'm sure we'll be talking again.
Absolutely, ma'am.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I will see you at the book launch.
Yes, can't wait. So, everyone, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Share this episode with a friend. Don't forget to check out Melanie. Visit her website at melaniekHall.com. Purchase the book as well, and find out when she's going to have one of those live in-person events. It's an event that you don't want to miss. So, thank you again for tuning in for this week's episode of Light It Up. Make sure you check out next week to see if I have another very interesting guest. So until next time, continue to light it up and shine bright like a diamond. Thanks for joining me this week on Light It Up. Make sure you visit my website at www.lightituppodcast.com or www.aginahmuhammad.com. You can also find me on social media using the handle at Light It Up Podcast. If you like what you've heard, please be sure to hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, I'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or you can simply tell a friend about the show. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for a new episode. Until next time, light it up and shine bright like a diamond.